try to work what I say. Because if you listen to the gospel will do this to you. The gospel will lead you to the place where you become so aware of God that you see God with you as a person everywhere you go. He no longer has a sense of intangibleness to him, but in fact he'll become the most tangible thing to you, even though you can't see him with your physical eyes. This is hard for us to wrap our brains around, but actually the sight of our heart is much more powerful than the sight of our physical eyes. Right? See, we try to see God with our physical eyes, and then that makes us think that he's not as tangible as he actually is. But the gospel comes and causes your heart to see God. That's actually what you see things through. That's why two people can look at one thing and see two things completely different.
Right.
Because you're actually seeing things through your heart. Right? A lot of times people think, well, I can't understand you. Well, you're trying to listen with your head. I'm not even talking to your head. I'm talking to your heart. And so one of the reasons why God has me preach like this is to put your head to rest. To confound your head. Shut up, head. You can't follow. Stop trying.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Just sit in the presence of the Spirit. But the heart is actually what we see things through. It's actually the most powerful way to see. The gospel comes and gives your heart eyes to see God. Then God becomes the most real and tangible thing with you everywhere you go. It isn't the tree that's there. It isn't the car that's there. It isn't the other people that's around you. It's that you begin to see God with you tangibly, not ethereally. Right?
It's a point at which Yanni becomes Laurel.
What did you say?
It's the point at which Yanni becomes Laurel.
That program on the internet.
What
do you hear?
Got it. Yeah.
Right? And so
Once you hear Laurel, it's hard to hear Yanni.
yeah, you can.
Yeah.
You can. And so the gospel opens the eyes of our heart. It opens the eyes of our understanding. We begin to know God. And as we know God, we begin to see him with our hearts. And I'm telling you, that becomes the most real thing in our lives. Where you even seem like a fool because you're all the time talking with God about everything. When you see a tree, your first thought is talking to God about what you see in the tree. When you feel a negative emotion, your first thought becomes to talk to God about the negative emotion, about the fear you feel, the anxiety you feel, the need you feel that you have, the thing that you don't like, the thing that's upsetting you. You find yourself talking with God. Then what happens is you find yourself giving thanks to God for what he's done to conquer it. Right?
Yes.
Then you find yourself acting the way a person who's possessed by God acts. Right? Like David. David was possessed by God. Saul was like, you can't go fight that giant? What are you thinking, bro? But if we can't stop you, at least take my gear. What did Saul say? I don't want your sword. I don't want your armor. I don't want your helmet. I don't need any of your stuff. God is with me. Right? And he began seeing that God was with him. And if God be with me, then nothing can actually stand against me. Nothing can conquer me. Nothing can overcome me. And then he went after life in that respect. Now you can't hear me say that and say, by golly, that's what I'm going to do. Right? Because what will happen is you'll be like those guys in the New Testament that were trying to mimic the disciples by casting out demons.
Right.
And then they got to the demon, and the demon said, Jesus I know and Paul I know, but who are you? Right? You see, they didn't actually know God. And the demon called them on it. Right? So you can't hear what I just said and think, I'm going to work that up. I'm going to bring it about. I believe what Greg said is true, so now I'm going to do it. But what you can hear is, let me hear the gospel. Let me fellowship with God. Right? And you can hear the gospel, and the gospel will cause you to start interacting with God this way. And I'm telling you, you'll see him with you.
Right.
God is not intangible. Faith is not intangible.
No.
It's not an unknown. It's actually the most known thing. It's actually the most real thing. It's actually the thing that you can lay your hands on more than anything else. Faith is the evidence. Or faith is the substance. It's a substance there. See, we try to see faith with our physical eyes.
Yeah.
And so then faith becomes ethereal. What is it? Where's it at? How can I grasp it? Right? And it's as if it isn't there because we're trying to see it with our natural eyes when it's a spiritual thing. But spiritual doesn't mean not real or not tangible or not containing substance. Jesus was raised in a spiritual body, and look what he said. Touch me. Handle me. For a spirit doesn't have flesh and blood. Jesus was faith manifested there. Now, could you touch it?
Yes.
Could you grab it?
Yes. Yes.
It wasn't that all of a sudden God was with the people. It was that God put on a skin so the people could see God was always with them. Do you see what I'm saying? He appeared to a carnal people who couldn't see that God was there, even though God was always there.
Right.
So he puts on a skin suit and appears so a carnal people can see him with their natural eyes. But he was always there. He didn't just now become there. It's just they could never see him because they were trying to see him with their natural eyes instead of knowing him with their heart and then having sight through their heart. Right? And so, man, Jesus appeared. We see God is with us. He's always been with us. He's our best friend. He's everywhere we go. He's not far. He's not, where are you going? Right? And the gospel will cause you to have eyes, so to speak, to see that. Right?
Indeed.
And that's what that's one of the things Paul was talking about when he says we live by the faith of the Son of God. Right? That's one of the things he's talking about when he says we live by faith, not by sight. He wasn't saying we don't live by what we see. He's saying we don't see with our physical eyes. We see with our hearts. And in our hearts is the faith.
Yes.
And that's our sight now. Right? So faith will cause you to see God.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean you working up your belief. I mean the faith that was made flesh in Jesus. When you sit at the feet of it and hear it, it will give you eyes to see God with you as the most real person you know and in your life. Whereas you think you need a friend to go talk to, and it doesn't mean you won't have friends and you won't talk to them. But what it means is God will be your go-to guy. Right? He'll be your go-to. Doesn't mean you won't ever need counsel or ever talk to people for counsel, but it's that your heart will be so aware of God with you that you're instinctively going to go right to Him when something is happening that ain't no good. And you don't know what to think about it. You don't know how to deal with it. You don't know how to proceed. You don't know how to... A million different things. How, why, when, what, where. But God. You see?
You know,